Welcome to the Escape into Board Games podcast.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Matt.
And this is our escape from the real world where we talk about board games. In this episode, we talk about 4 fast games for Fright Night.
So please join us for the Escape into Board Games podcast.
As we often say, there is a board game for every occasion. Even more so for games to play at Halloween.
Halloween is a special time for lots of people, which is why Halloween can be found in every corner of our society.
Halloween, or scary horror movies, are a genre all their own. In fact, scary movies are so prolific, they could be divided into subgenres like
slasher horror,
horror comedy,
psychological horror,
torture porn,
found footage,
J-horror,
creature feature,
revenge horror,
body horror,
zomcom,
gothic,
splatterpunk,
grindhouse,
sharksploitation,
cosmic horror,
home invasion,
or thriller.
And things are not so different in the board game world.
There are more games just about zombies than all the games about all the other holidays put together.
That's without comparing all the games about ghosts, haunted houses, creatures, monsters, vampires, and many others.
There are so many different flavors of games to play during the month of October. There are
Halloween social deduction games,
deck building games about monsters,
creepy Euros,
card games about creatures,
pressure luck games about zombies,
and so much more.
In this episode, we look at 4 games that play quickly, each of them offering something different that you can play on those cool dark nights in October.
So sit back in your crypt and listen as we share with you 4 fast games for Fright Night.
Matt, have you ever done like a Halloween-themed board game night where you just play horror games or Halloween games with your friends?
We've often talked about doing that, about having the Mansions of Madness night or Betrayal at House on the Hill. We've done Betrayal at House on the Hill in October for sure.
Yeah.
But we didn't follow it up with other themed games in that area.
Right. There's something about October, isn't it? Like the world seems to get extraordinarily excited about Halloween.
Yeah.
And board gamers in particular seem to get excited about it as well, because there are so many games about horror and Halloween and witches and ghosts and goblins.
Yeah, it's true.
And just the idea of sitting around a table with a bunch of friends listening to some scary music in the background, you know.
Yeah.
We do one pretty much every year where we just play kind of horror-themed games, that kind of thing. Yeah. I like it.
I mean, I have a lot of games that could work well in my collection on a cool night in October. There are certainly enough zombie games out there.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I think it's the one theme that I see talked about in the board game community the most. It's like, we've had enough zombie games, please don't put out any more.
Yeah.
And then there's always 1 or 2 more that come out that year.
That's right.
It's like, oh, okay, I've got to try that one now. I've got to try that one. That one looks good. I said no more zombie games, but this one looks interesting. I'm just going to try that one. Which is why I'm really curious about your first game that you're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Because there's no zombies involved.
That's right.
All right.
0 zombies. Whirling Witchcraft. Whirling Witchcraft is a simultaneous action selection, variable player powers game about witches brewing potions for 2 to 5 players, ages 14 and up, that plays between 15 and 30 minutes. Whirling Witchcraft was designed by Eric Anderson Sundian, with art by Weberson Santiago, and published by AEG in 2021. Welcome, witch. Your workbench is waiting. Being a witch is all about wielding powerful magical ingredients. The more powerful, the more brilliant magic they can produce. But be careful. One witch can only wield so much power before everything blows up in their face. This is a fact you're willing to use to your advantage when you're trying to destroy your nemesis. However, while you're brewing the ingredients to get the job done, someone else is trying to do the same to you. Well, at least you've got some more ingredients to work with now. You just have to make sure you're not the one that blows up. So in Whirling Witchcraft, players are witches, and they have in front of them a workbench, which holds their magic ingredients for producing potions in their little stand-up cardboard cauldron. And that's basically the components. You've got some colored cubes, which represent your toads and spiders and mushrooms and mandrake and heart of shadow, but really they're just green, red, white, blue, and black cubes.
Cool.
The art is by Weberson Santiago, and we know him from games like The Bloody Inn or Fuji,
Right.
or maybe most famously the Brazilian version of Coup.
Yeah. His art is astounding. On this one, I mean, the cover of the game does nothing for me. I would never have said, "Oh, that's that Weberson Santiago guy." No. It doesn't.
Yeah?
It doesn't seem like his typical art. But when you look at the cards, it's like, oh my God. And is it a player board?
The player boards are the workbenches, and that is where you keep your spiders and mushrooms and mandrakes.
Yeah.
It is just a square board, but each of them has been decorated with these different potion making tools on there, and like little knickknacks and some arcane runes.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Like the detail into the boards and the cards. It's that sort of, I want to say it's like this painted work. It's a painting. It's art.
Yeah, it feels like what's watercolor. I'm
Yeah.
not sure which medium Weberson Santiago works in, but it
Yeah, me neither.
looks like it's painted.
Yeah. And it looks astounding. Even the little cauldrons. I mean, these little cardboard cauldrons, which are just like this little circular stand, but they have like the swirl of the liquid inside. And they look so good.
Yes. They're 3D, and it's this little 3D round platform, and then there's a ring that goes on top. So when you put your cubes in the cauldron, they don't fall out.
Right.
You can actually pick the whole cauldron up and you pass it to the next player. You pass them all along. The cubes stay in there, and yeah, it's nicely decorated. It looks like a bubbling cauldron. And I would recommend, if you're going to purchase this game, that just take a little bit of white glue and glue that cauldron together so that it doesn't come apart when you've put it away in the box. And then it's a really significant game piece, right? Like, it's a very simple game. We're just dealing with some cubes and some cards, but the player boards are beautifully illustrated, and then we've got these little cauldrons, which are a great game component as well.
Yeah. We always have to talk about Weberson Santiago's artwork in a game because it adds so much to this feeling. Like just looking at those player boards, you just feel like you're taking this peek into this world of the witches and the cauldron and
Yes.
and you know, the little bugs and mushrooms and leaves and stirring spoons on the side, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's so mysterious and maybe a little bit creepy, but it's like there's magic there.
Yeah, it is.
So players are given, in addition to their workbench and their cauldron and a few ingredients to start with, players are given recipe cards. And these cards will have a turn this into that equation on them. Basically, what you're doing is you're converting your toads and spiders and mushrooms into mandrakes and hearts of shadow. Or maybe 2 toads can make 3 spiders.
Okay.
And so everybody will have a small hand of these cards, and on your turn, there's just basically 2 phases. There's the study phase where you choose a card from your hand, and then the brew phase where once it's added to your tableau, you then execute all the recipes that you have. And that basically means you will take a red cube from your workbench and add it to the recipe that requires a red cube. It needs 1 red cube. So you put that cube on the card, and then this recipe is going to produce 2 green cubes. And so you take 2 green cubes from the supply, put those into your cauldron. And so you're just churning through the ingredients from your workbench and then making them into new ingredients and putting those new ingredients into your cauldron. At the end of the brewing phase, you hand your cauldron to your nemesis player. It'll be the player on your left or player on your right. You all decide at the beginning of the game which way we're going to go.
Okay.
And I'm constantly handing my stuff to Sherry, and Chris, you're constantly handing your stuff to me, and then Sherry's handing her stuff to you.
Okay.
And this is how we get new cubes into our workbench.
Neat.
So we can now make new recipes and make new stuff. Then we start the whole process again. Draw up to 4. We have these recipe cards in our hands. We choose one. And now we're going to choose a recipe card based on the ingredients that we just got, because we know that our nemesis player, the player that we're giving stuff to, is going to be doing that. But player is going to give us stuff, is going to be giving us a certain set of cubes. You look at the recipes that they've got in front of them, they're going to be producing lots of red and green. You want to have recipes in your tableau that use red and green to turn them into something else.
Right.
Hopefully something that the player to your left can't use. There is certain spots on your workbench for these ingredients, and you've got lots of room for toads and frogs and spiders, but not that much room for mandrakes and shadow of heart. And so if you make these white cubes or these black cubes, they're actually really hard to get rid of and really hard to keep. And so you can quite easily overflow your opponent's workbench. Any cubes that you send to your opponent that your opponent can't fit on their workbench come back to you as victory points.
Okay. All right.
And so you're basically trying to bust your opponent. You're trying to give them way too many cubes that they can't use. And then the cubes come back to you. Once a witch at the table has 5 or more cubes, the game ends, and the witch with the most cubes is the winner.
Okay. It sounds a lot like a combination of like Splendor or Century Spice Road mixed with the Quacks of Quidlin.
A little bit, yeah.
Because of that cauldron exploding thing. But instead of exploding your own cauldron, you're trying to blow up your opponent, the person on your left or right.
Yeah. That turned this into that Euro mechanism. Those recipes on the cards are very familiar to anybody who's played board games before.
Yes.
One of the cards would be turn a frog into a mandrake. That's a pretty good, right? That turns a green into a white.
Right.
That's awesome because greens are prolific and whites are rare. And then maybe you'll get one that says, oh, you can put a blue or a red cube in here and then get 2 red cubes or 1 red cube and 1 green cube. You get a choice. As you're brewing the potion, this recipe can be, you can substitute different colors in there if you needed to, which is great when you don't know which cubes you're going to get. And then you look at your other opponent and you don't know which ones would be the worst for them. If they don't have any recipes to get rid of red cubes, then you want to give them as many red cubes as you can so that their red workbench overflows faster.
Right. And thematically, when you are mixing these cubes together, you're brewing a potion.
Yeah, in the cauldron.
The Void Storm.
Summoning of slime.
The Elixir of Sorrow.
Rune of Chaos.
Tornado of Toads. That's awesome.
Some of the cards, some of the recipes will have arcane effects on them. They'll have like a little icon along the top. So maybe they aren't the best recipe and they've offset the quality of the recipe with this other little bonus.
Okay.
And so these arcane effects you collect on a separate player board. And once you have a certain number, then you can cash them in for special ability.
Oh, okay. So it's a way of taking a not so great card, giving it another use.
So that's kind of adds like another little layer, another path to get to where you're going. Because the cards in your hand can be kind of limiting, right?
Yeah.
You might not have the recipes you need to get rid of this deluge of cubes that are coming from your opponent. So this gives you another little option.
Yeah. I'm really curious about this game. It sounds wonderful.
You would love it, yeah.
I think I would. I mean, obviously, you had me at the cauldron, like that 3D cauldron. I was there. It was like, you look at it, and especially if you look at it from far away, you don't see that it's made of cardboard. You know what I mean? It looks like a little cauldron.
Oh, it's really well put together. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's a cardboard thing. It really feels like it's been put together well. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. But I'm very curious about the gameplay because it sounds interesting. Like I don't think I've played tons of games where you convert a resource into victory points, or you convert this into that, and then eventually you get enough that turns into victory points, or that you later on use somewhere else to turn into victory points.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've played one where you turn this into that and then give it to the other player to kind of get rid of. And I like that idea. Like that's a lot more player interaction than I would expect from these kinds of games normally.
And it's really interesting at 2 players, you're just passing the cauldron between you.
Right.
Right. And it is a very competitive game because you have to be very conscious of what you're going to get and what you're giving, right? You have to be very conscious of that cycle. And the games can go very long if you're both making recipes that combat the other recipes very well, right? It can be quite challenging and equally balanced. 3-player game is very different in that you have to keep track of everybody at the table, but you're not directly interacting.
Yeah.
The things I'm sending Sherry are not coming back to me from Sherry, they're coming from Chris. And so there's that sort of interesting cycle, and you can actually call into, you can go, hey, look, Chris, Sherry's going to win the game if she blah, 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 if you don't give me this, right? And that sort of thing. And it becomes very meta.
Yeah. I don't like sitting beside Sherry. Don't make me sit beside Sherry. Always sit beside Sherry, and she always hands me the worst stuff. That sounds great. I got to play this game.
Yeah, no, it's fun. And again, you can 15, 30 minutes and we're done.
Yeah.
So we often play it 2-3 times in a row. We'll play it once where we're passing the cauldrons clockwise, and then we'll play it again where we're passing the cauldrons counterclockwise.
Sounds and looks really, really delightful. I want to play it. The game I'm going to talk about next is a zombie game. Big surprise, right? But the one I'm going to talk about is a game by Martin Wallace. Martin Wallace he's a big time designer. He has designed hundreds of games. He's designed A Few Acres of Snow, London, Steam, Moon God Invaders, Mythopia, Onward to Venus, Via Nebula, just a huge, huge long list. The Study in Emerald.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm forgetting. And his games, I think, are known for being relatively complex or quite complex.
Sure.
And deep strategic kind of games. So this one is a dice game. It's very, very light. And for that reason, I was really curious about it, because you've got this sort of esteemed designer sort of designing outside of their normal game genre. Hit the Road. Hit the Road is a dice rolling auction zombie fighting game for 1 to 4 players, ages 12 and up, that plays in about 30 to 45 minutes. Hitsy Road was designed by Martin Wallace and was published by Space Cowboys in 2016.
Chris, is it not pronounced Hit Zed Road?
Yes, I suppose one might pronounce it that way.
Okay, just clarifying. Continue.
Hey, my name's Martin. Me, my parents, and my sister had quite the adventure last year. We lost some good people, but we also made new friends along the way. The world's falling apart, but at least now we live in the sun. No more school. Also, I have a new job. I make ammo so Dad can pop zombies. I have a ton of free time, and one day, when I was bored, I made this game about last year's trip. Hope you like it.
That's awesome.
The look of the game is pretty fantastic. It is this sort of zombie apocalypse game, and the box is worn out. It looks like, a vacation pamphlet where it's like, hit the road and come on the vacation. And there's this guy driving this 1950s kind of big car with a big steering wheel. The top is off, and there's a woman outside with her hand up, and it's kind of decayed, and the word hit the road has been scratched off, and its Z has been sort of markered over it because it's zombified.
It's like an old board game that has been repurposed.
Yeah.
Because it says hit the road as seen on TV, the travel game, fun for the whole family is all there. But then the has been scratched out with a Z, and then no more TV because as seen is scratched off. And then instead of the travel game, it's my zombie game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think there's a barcode at the bottom that's sort of been scratched off. Oh, for ages 9 and up has been scratched off.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really like, it looks water stained and faded and scratched, and like it looks like it has a ton of shelfware.
Yeah.
And it kind of looks like this kid has taken this Hit the Road board game and created their own version. Like everything about this game just is well thought out in terms of production value and the look of it and all that kind of thing. Inside, each page of the rule book looks like this sort of graph paper with these handwritten notes and hand-drawn sort of examples. There's sort of newspaper clippings behind the pages that you can see. Things have been torn out and coffee stained. It's very, very, very well done. The resource tokens that you have in the game look like bottle caps.
That's right.
In three different colors. And they're these cardboard punched out, bottle cap shapes. The cards have this really worn feel on them. And they look like they've been pasted on a deck of cards, much like you would do in like a prototype or a print and play game, is you'd print out the front of the card and then just stick it on, the jack of spades or whatever. Right. What's really cool actually is some of the cards actually have the card faces beneath it kind of peeled up.
Oh, poking through?
And those are the ones you take out when you play just a 2-player only game.
No way.
So it's like take out any card that you can see like a jack or a queen or a king or a 10.
Way.
Yeah. So take out those cards and then just play with the ones that are left.
Oh, that's so clever.
Yeah. And then you've got player markers that indicate sort of what turn order that you're in. And it's this whole, fake world, like they're credit cards, and some of the tokens are car keys, these little cardboard looking card keys. And one of the player tokens, it says, "Hello, my name is," and somebody scrawled on it in marker number 2.
Nice.
The artwork itself is, like on the actual fronts of the cards, is very, very good.
Yeah.
It doesn't speak to me nearly as much as the old, look of the back of the cards. It's one of the better productions that I've seen. And it all fits with that theme very, very much and helps you get into that world very quickly. And that's important because this game is tough. This is a bleak, hard-fought, punishing game. For a dice game, it's easy to learn, but it's not super duper easy.
Yeah, okay.
What you're doing is you are going on a road trip from Chicago along America's famous Route 66, which is now infested by zombies, and you're headed with your family to the California coast. You want to use the resources that you have, which are gasoline, bullets, and adrenaline. So like an energy that you get.
Right.
Hitsy Road is a dice rolling game, but it's more of an auction bidding game, which I find is a little different.
Okay.
It's a competitive game. It's a game where you're trying to get your family to the California coast.
Oh, okay.
And along the way, you're going to take different paths and fight zombies probably.
Yeah.
And find resources and spend those resources to survive, to keep as many people in your group alive as possible.
Is it bleak?
It's very bleak. Yeah.
Okay.
Your choices are, I could take this really horrible route, which would be devastating and unlikely for me to make everyone survive. Or I could take this really bad route, which I have a good chance of getting through, but I might lose one or two of my guys. Or I could take this absolutely abysmal route, which will, probably wipe me out and I'll lose the game. And you have to make that decision several times throughout the game.
Wow.
So what happens is at the beginning of each round, a number of cards are laid out depending on how many players. And there are routes in the form of 2 cards. So there's a left card and a right card. You have to go through them from left to right. And each card has some sort of resource that you might get, although some of them have none. They might have a special ability or a token that you might be able to use later on, or something that might come back to haunt you later on in the game. Many of them will have an icon on it that tells you, there's 3 zombies that you have to fight in this path. And some of those cards actually give you victory points as well. Not all of them. All the players are sort of bidding on who gets to choose one of these sets of 2 cards first. And obviously you want to choose the one that is easiest for you to get through, which is probably the one that's easiest for everyone to get through.
Okay, yeah.
And you're paying resources. You're paying gas, bullets, and adrenaline to outbid your opponents.
Okay.
So you have to pay those resources to take that path. The good news is when you choose a path, the first thing you get is your resources. So you get some resources back after you've outbid everyone if you get first choice. But the cards that have, the really good resources or lots of different resources on them usually have higher zombies that you have to fight.
Right.
The game comes with your little meeple. You've got sort of a leader meeple and then some gray meeple, just some people that you're trying to keep alive.
Yeah.
And then they come with these sort of black zombie meeple. Have you seen these?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're a little weird, right?
They look like the crossing guard symbol or something.
Yeah, it looks more like an icon that you'd see in like a bathroom or a crossing symbol or something. And I guess the only part of them that's zombie is they have their hands outreached and
they're kind of leaning back a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But anyway, so you look at your card, you get 2 gas icons because you found some gas along the way. And then you've got 3 zombies that you have to fight. So you have 4 survivors left. So you get 4 of these custom dice and you roll them. And for every hit, you kill off a zombie, which is awesome, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you roll a symbol that requires an additional resource to kill that zombie. It's like this. I didn't actually kill the zombie, but I've got an opportunity to kill him if I, spend a bullet.
Right. Yeah.
Or if I spend an adrenaline to kind of, hit him over the head or that kind of thing. So the adrenaline is what you use to kill some of the zombies sometimes. And then there are, basically death symbols, like the zombie got somebody. And sometimes you even get an opportunity to rescue the people that the zombies got, but it costs resources.
Oh, wow.
So resources are really scarce because you're spending those resources to choose the easiest path. So you don't want to overspend in your auction phase. So the auction part is so important, right? Because if you spent 8 resources, you're not going to have enough to get through even just 3 zombies. And as the game goes on, there's 5 and 6 zombies to fight.
Is there any strategy to deliberately underbid everybody else just to hoard your resources? And then I guess you end up taking the worst card.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many cards are out in a 2-player game?
In a 2-player game, there's 3 rows. So there's 3 different paths with 2 cards each. And the bottom row has this card key token on it. And it requires 2 extra resources to take. So that one could be the worst path.
Yeah.
But it could also be the best path because the cards come out randomly. And if that's the path you want, you have to pay what you bid, which could be 0, plus 2 additional resources.
Oh, wow.
So the resources get spent really, really fast. And, the most resources that you're getting from any one card, I think might be 4. Normally it's 1 or 2 resources that you're getting back. You can bid up to 10. The auction board has 10, and I've never seen anyone bid that much.
Yeah.
And I don't know why you would, because it just seems ridiculously high for what you get. Maybe at the very end of the game, as you've got this sort of one Hail Mary kind of turn with lots of resources, perhaps. But anyway, so you go through the 2 cards, you collect any that are going to give you victory points at the end of the game, and then you do it all again. A bunch of new cards come out.
Okay.
You bid on which one you're going to take. And eventually you've sort of created this path, through the different locations on the cards. And you've collected resources, fought off zombies. And every time you play, you've lost people.
Yeah.
You start with, I think it's 4 sort of followers that are following you plus your leader. And that determines how many dice you roll to fight them.
Oh, my.
But as the game progresses, you lose followers, you get less dice, and you have more zombies to fight.
Jeez.
And some of those zombies the card has a symbol on it where you replace one of the black dice, or maybe 2 or 3 of the black dice, with these red dice. And the red dice are really, really bad because they have an extra death symbol on them, meaning one of your followers has to die.
Yeah.
So the game really, really ramps up. It's a player elimination game, which is not normally a game that I like.
Sure.
But this one's short enough that it's not really a problem. But if you survive to the end, it's very common for you to get by with just your leader left.
Oh, wow.
Like one guy, like you started with 5 and you made it down to 1. Sometimes you'll find other followers on the road.
Okay.
But at the end, 1 or 2, I think, might be the most that I've ever seen people make it through because it is punishing. It's a lot like the TV show Walking Dead. Don't get too attached to any of your characters because they're going to be gone before it's all
They're
done.
not going to last.
It's a fun game. I'm making it sound like, oh my God, it's so bleak and torture. But it's a lot of fun. It's more fun to sort of watch your opponent lose people than it is for yourself. But it's a very, very good game. Very, very light. Can play it with anybody. The age says 12 and up. And I think that's probably only because it is such a punishing game. I think you could probably play it with younger people. The problem would be, can they take losing?
Sure.
If your child is not such a good loser, regardless of their age, this is probably one you want to skip over.
Yeah, it's aged that way because of the bleakness, not because of the complexity.
Yeah.
It sounds like to me that the mechanism of auctioning your gasoline and your adrenaline and your ammunition, not to actually feed your people or fight off the zombies, but in order just to have the opportunity to take the road less traveled, is very zombie apocalyptic theme. It does evoke a bleakness in the mechanisms itself, which is why it's so suited for this theme.
Yeah, it works so well. It's that auction mechanic is not one that I really think of when I think, oh, we're going to play a zombie game. That means we're going to do auctioning, right? It is common in Euro games and more strategic games that Martin Wallace might do, but not one in a zombie game.
That's true.
But basically, you're auctioning to take that easier path, the one that you can get through. At the beginning of the game, it can be quite easy, right? Like you got to get through 2 cards. And if you're lucky, both of those cards give you a resource and there's nothing to fight. Yay,
nice.
Oh, this game's easy.
Yeah.
But it escalates quite quickly and you start losing people quite quickly throughout the game until the end. And yeah, thematically, that part works perfectly because you've got to use the gasoline to get from this card to that card. You have to, bid on them. And then you're going to find some things on the trip, but it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be what you expect, right?
Wow, yeah.
And then you're using those same resources to shoot the zombies, to survive the zombies, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And to not lose players. And when the next round comes along, you're ready and you're like, okay, I think I can afford to bid 3 this time. You bid your 3 and maybe you win. Maybe you're in second place or third place in the auction and whatever.
Yeah.
And then you go to pay them and you realize, oh no, I've got to actually pay those 3 resources, which seemed great when I had this little pile of 7 resources. So I paid those 3. So now I've only got 4 left to fight, the zombies. And I need 1 to survive it. Because you can see right on the card what you need in terms of resources and what you're going to get.
Huh.
It's this really tough decisions throughout the game that is being affected by that auction board. That auction mechanic is strong in this game.
That's very cool. Yeah, I want to try this one. This sounds very interesting.
It's fun. It's short. It doesn't overstay its welcome. And it's something you can play a couple times in a night with no problem. Hitsy Road.
So we've talked about a Witches Brewing Euro Take That game, and we've talked about a zombie auction dice game. And now I'd like to talk about the token social deduction game. People will often be familiar with the game Werewolf, which is what it was referred to in North America. Originally, it was called Mafia, as it was invented in Russia in 1986.
Right.
The first original social deduction game. And that was basically what Werewolf is today. It's a very simple game where amongst the players of the table, there are 2 people that are the bad guys, and it's everybody's job to figure out who they are.
Right.
And that was the basis for the very first social deduction game, and we've seen a slew of them since then, including
Bang, A Fake Artist Goes to New York, Spyfall, 2 Rooms and a Boom, The Resistance.
But the next game we're going to talk about is probably the simplest and most popular of all of those games because it distills that social deduction game into a tight 10 minutes and then allows the players at the table to play quick games in rapid succession, allowing everybody to play and have a turn at each of the different roles. One Night Ultimate Werewolf. One Night Ultimate Werewolf is a hidden role trader voting app-driven party game for 3 to 10 players ages 10 and up that plays in 10 minutes. One Night Ultimate Werewolf was designed by Ted Alspach and Akiza Okui and published by Bezier Games in 2014. So similar to the original Werewolf, in One Night Ultimate Werewolf, we play villagers that are being plagued by werewolves.
Right.
Between 2, maybe 3 players around the table are werewolf players, and it's their objective to stay hidden and survive to the end of the game without being discovered.
Right.
And this is an app-driven game, so what you need to do is you download the app, and it's a pretty grandiose timer. So it's not like everyone's playing on their phones. It's just one person has the app, they load it up, and they hit go. And the app will sort of read out a script predetermined on, depending on which characters you're playing with. Then it just runs it all. It's like a moderator.
Yeah.
Without having a moderator.
Now, can you play this game without the app? I think so.
You would just need a moderator. Someone to do the thing that the app does.
Right.
Which is just read a script. They've simplified it to the point where they just need a script. In the original Werewolf, you need a moderator.
Yeah.
In Two Rooms and a Boom, you need a moderator. One player has to stand around and not play the game so that the game can be facilitated.
Right.
Which is kind of unfortunate.
Yeah.
But in this game, they've really simplified it, and it's just turn this thing on and hit go. So when you first load up the app, it gives you a chance to incorporate many different roles that are in the game. There's more than just villagers and werewolves in this game. You can have seers and minions and troublemakers and the insomniac. This is where you make that selection, build that deck in the app before you hit go. And then you take these different roles, shuffle them up, and hand them out to the players. Once you're ready to go, you hit play.
Everyone, close your eyes.
And we get the dulcet tones of the famous Eric Summerer from the Dice Tower, who is the voice for the narrator in the app.
Werewolves, stick out your thumb so the minion can see who you are.
And it goes on like this, giving everybody what they're supposed to be doing in their game, in their role, and then, at the end, we all open our eyes. And then it's just a matter of determining. Everyone at the table has to figure out who are the werewolves. And that's the game. And we have a big discussion, and the game is the players at the table, because it all depends on who everybody is as a person will determine how this game is being played. You got very outgoing, shouty people, then it becomes a very outgoing, shouty game. And it's really interesting how the meta of it unfolds depending on who's at the table.
I think that's why it's been such a successful game, in colleges and universities everywhere as Mafia, and then later as Werewolf, because you get to know the people that you're playing with quite well, right? There's that loud person who, always accuses other people when they're the werewolf. And then there's that really quiet person who never seems to say anything. And every time they're the werewolf, they get away with it, kind of thing. And all the variations of people and personalities in between those two interact and really bring out a lot while you're playing this game.
Agreed. I like that it starts off, it's very simple. You'll get the werewolf cards and you'll get the villager cards and maybe the mason. A good example of a nice, easy character to include is the mason. Their ability is there's always two. At nighttime, when we all close our eyes, the werewolves will open their eyes and get to know who the other werewolves are, so they know who their teammates are, then they close their eyes. The masons are just regular villagers, but they both wake up in the middle of the night. They look at each other, they both know that they're both good guys and they're on the same team, then they close their eyes again, and then it continues, and all this other stuff happens. So when you wake up, the Masons already have an ally immediately. They know that themselves and the other Mason are the good guys. They're on their team, and they can just sort of sit back and watch the discussion unfold, see who starts blaming whom, and see what's happening. And then if the other Mason gets picked, then you'll know, well, I know that the Mason is the Mason's good guys. So that person accusing the Mason is likely lying. And then I can use that information. I can reveal, you guys, I'm the Mason. And I know this because my partner's the Mason. Bye-bye. It's just like, it's really, really interesting the ways that the discussions unfold, depending on who ends up with which role and how they handle that role. It can be a lot of fun.
Now, I have to say, I'm horrible, like absolutely horrible at almost every social deduction game. And I would describe them as a social deduction game is a game that is relatively easy to screw up for everybody.
Maybe.
Would you agree with that?
There are quite a few social deduction games and some classic deduction games that if one of the players doesn't know what they're doing, the game can be broken.
Right. Now, with One Night Ultimate Werewolf, it's a very short, each game is a sort of short round. So it's just a matter of, okay, let's just redistribute the roles, shuffle them again and go.
But I don't think you can break One Night Ultimate Werewolf like you can other games. Like if a player doesn't know what they're doing, they can say something stupid, but it won't ruin the experience for other players.
You explain the rules and what the different roles are, and then you hand out the different roles, and someone says, "What does the werewolf mean again?"
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, okay, give me back everyone's roles. We're going to reshuffle them. Like that kind of thing can happen.
Yeah. So I took it up to the cottage one March break when I was stuck at the cottage with my kids and then another family who also had kids. So there was like maybe 6 kids total at this cottage for March break. And we played it 72 times.
What? In 1 week, 72 times. That's more than 10 times per day. That's incredible.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
This is your most played game then?
This is my most played game. I'm not saying that I enjoyed every one of those plays for sure. It gets a little tiresome. Yes. But the kids certainly did. They asked for it repeatedly.
As kids will do.
And with different groups, the parents, the adults would join in periodically, and some would come and some would go, and the game dynamic would change. And then depending on who got what rule, the game would change. It would be fresh enough that there'd be something new in there for everybody. And there's different roles as well. Everybody's roles are handed out with these nice thick tiles. And so they're nice and chunky, easy to pick up, not like cards.
And on their side, it says, you are the werewolf, or you are the seer.
Yeah, it'll have a werewolf, or it'll have a picture of your character on it.
Right.
And they're face down in front of you. So the seer has the ability to peek at one of these roles. They can easily pick up that chunky, it's like a coaster. It's like thick, like a coaster.
Yeah.
And they pick up that card and they look at it and then know for sure, oh, Chris is the minion, or Chris is the villager. For sure, he's one of the good guys. They can only look at one, but it gives them enough information. Now, maybe somebody doesn't end up with the seer role. Then a werewolf could say that they are the seer. They could take a chance and they could go, well, I'm the seer, and I looked at Chris's card and he's the werewolf. Whereas Chris is actually the villager. Nobody looked at your card. This guy's just lying, right? And there's so many things you can do because the meta, it's just conversation. You can choose anything you want.
Yeah. Some people, no matter what they say, they look guilty, right?
Oh, that's true.
Like, I mean, it's just the person that you play with. It's like, no. I think it's this person because of this. And all of a sudden, oh, that's exactly what a werewolf would say. And every game for thereafter, that person seems guilty.
Yeah. Oh, that's exactly what a werewolf would say.
Yeah.
That's the common fallback for sure. In addition to everybody's role cards being on these thick tiles, there's also these little tokens that you can sort of splash onto the table to try to keep track of who everybody is. So there's a matching token for each role.
Okay.
And it's a little double-sided token, and they just put them in the middle of the table. So when somebody says, well, I think Chris is the werewolf, they'll take a werewolf token and slide it in front of Chris. Okay, that's one werewolf. The other werewolf is Sherry, and then Beth is the seer, and then I'm the villager, and then Mark is going to be the troublemaker. And then you take all the tokens, you kind of disperse them around the players to sort of account for everybody. Oh, this is who you said you're there, that person. It's kind of like a little tool, a way to figure out who has which roles. So what I like to do as soon as we wake up from the nighttime phase is I reach out and I grab my token and I just hold it in my hand. And so when people start saying, oh, well, I think so-and-so is the tanner, I'm like, oh, you think that person's the tanner? And I open my hand, which they've seen has been closed the entire time.
Right.
So I'm committed. I grabbed this token at the beginning of the round. I didn't wait to see what everybody else said before I said I was the tanner. I grabbed the tanner right at the beginning and I kept it in my hand. And that's, you know what I mean? Like that's, you got your role in there. There's so many different ways you can play it.
Right.
And then so many different players playing it.
I suspect this is kind of the game. Like, we've had some friends who, I don't like lying. I don't like telling the truth. If you don't like lying, this is probably not the game for you.
You were saying how some social deduction games are fragile. Some games are easier for people who can't lie or don't lie or have, right? I would put Time Bomb as being the easiest social deduction game.
Okay.
And then One Night just a hair above that.
Hair above it. Okay.
Because One Night Ultimate Werewolf has different roles and each role does something different, and you have to learn the rule about that role before you can include it in the game.
Right.
Everybody needs to know what that role does, right? That's what you're saying.
Right.
Every player at the table needs to know what every role does, because if you'll end up with a role that you don't understand, you stop the game and you go, hold on a second, what does this guy do again? And then you've screwed it up.
What's the seer do? Oh, you're the seer.
Right?
Yeah.
And even though Eric's voice is there narrating along and to tell us what we need to do and when we need to do it, you still need to teach that aspect of the game.
Yes.
But
Right.
When you got that captive audience for a night and everyone's invested, they do want to make it fresh and interesting each and every time. It usually works. Okay, we're going to add this guy in. What does that guy do? Everybody's listening. Everybody wants to know because they've been having so much fun so far. They want it to continue. If it's fallen flat, they don't want to play a second game anyway, so you just put it away.
Right.
But usually it's 3, 4, 5 rounds of this before people start to get tired.
Yeah.
And even when they do get tired, you got a group of 8 people. 3 people can walk away and you can still play.
Exactly. Yeah. Or 3 people can join in. And it's very short so that if somebody's watching and they're like, oh, that looks fun. Can I play the next one? The next one's only in a couple minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Stick around. It won't be long.
Yeah.
The rounds are timed. The nighttime phase is only just a couple of minutes. And then the discussion phase is a few minutes. And the whole thing is start to finish 10 minutes.
Right.
And then in addition to all the different roles that are in the box that you can include or not include, there are several expansions to One Night Ultimate Werewolf. There is One Night Ultimate Daybreak, which includes characters like an apprentice seer or the village idiot or the robber or the bodyguard. And there is One Night Ultimate Vampire, which now you have things like alpha wolves and vampires, of course. There's One Night Ultimate Alien and One Night Ultimate Supervillains.
It's a great game. It's really easy to pick up. It's very, very fun. And the more you play it, the better you get at these kinds of games and the more different strategies you can try out and risks that you can take while you're playing it and try bold strategies, that kind of thing. It's really, really well done. It's a good game. Good choice. Our next game is surprise, surprise, a zombie game. Surprise, surprise. It's a voting game about a zombie apocalypse. It's an older game. There has been a reprint. I don't like the reprint nearly as much as the original.
Okay.
The reprint is a little bit more complex, and this one is just simple and works really well on its own. Mall of Horror. Mall of Horror is a voting and dice rolling zombie negotiation game for 3 to 6 players, ages 14 and up, that plays in about an hour. Mall of Horror was designed by Nicholas Normandin and was published by Nexus in 2005. Society is at the edge of the pit, and the rare survivors took refuge in a shopping center in order to resist the constant increase in living dead devourers of human flesh. You are one of those last alive human beings on Earth, and you will do everything possible to escape this uncomfortable situation. A little bit more than an uncomfortable situation. So, Mall of Horror is essentially a voting game with negotiation. It relies heavily on negotiating.
Okay.
So it's a game that I would suggest you play with a larger group. The board for Mall of Horror is made up of the inside of this mall, this shopping mall.
Okay.
And there are 5 different rooms in a circle around the outside of the board. And the rooms in the mall that survived the apocalypse so far are things like a supermarket, clothing store, a bathroom stall, a toy store, and the security headquarters.
Okay.
And you're going to be inundated with attacks from these zombies. And you're going to be taking your little band of survivors and making them basically run from place to place because they get afraid and the room gets overrun by zombies or a noise happens.
Yeah.
And you're going to run from room to room and try and survive. While you're doing that, you're going to be making negotiations. You're going to be like, hey, Matt, if we vote together, we can kick out Lisa and then take over, as security chief, and we can do this together and we'll survive to the end. And all negotiations are not binding.
Oh, wow.
Which I think is the reason for the 14 and up age range, because it is a mean game.
Okay.
I literally say to you, hey, Matt, I'm going to vote for you to be the leader. And then I vote for someone else 2 seconds later.
It's diplomacy with zombies.
Yes, exactly. It's all about surviving. It's not show business. It's not friend business. It's zombie business. It's all about surviving in this game.
Okay.
And if you don't like games like that, this is definitely not the game for you.
Okay.
This is a game where we're voting about who's going to die in each room. So you start the game with usually 3, depending on how many players, you might get a 4th, but 3 wooden tokens. Each one is a different person. There is like a cheerleader type character. There's a guy with a gun. There's a guy with a baseball bat. And they all sort of do different things or help the group or hinder the group in different ways.
Okay.
And they're all worth different points. If you save the cheerleader at the end of the game, she's worth 7. If you save one of the guys, he's worth 5, and another one's worth 3, I think. And you are trying to make as many of your players or your team or your gang survive to the end of the game when the helicopter comes, lands on the roof of the mall, and rescues everybody who's still alive in the shopping mall. The winner is the player who has saved the most points in people from their group.
Okay.
So if I saved 3 people and you only saved 1, I'm going to win because the total of my 3 guys to your 1 is going to be more. But if I saved my 7 and you saved your 5 and 3, then you win, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Your cheerleader character, the female character, is the one that's worth the most. So you want to try and save her, but she comes with problems, as does this game. It's an older game. It came out in 2005. And if you were a gamer in 2005, there weren't many games that included women.
Right.
And there weren't many games that didn't have these sort of stereotypical personas of women.
And you can find these stereotypes and these tropes in these horror games over and over and over again because they want to evoke that culture of the female heroine at the end of the horror movie who we've seen it time and time again. All of Jason movies and in Halloween, it's the single female is the victor, the one that defeats the bad guy at the end.
Exactly.
Unlikely with all the odds against her.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think the jock is going to make it out of this alive because he's big and strong and he's a leader on the field. And, you know, he dies in some horrible way screaming and the girl wins.
Every time.
And that's what they're trying to recreate with this. I mean, the fact that they call her a cheerleader, they're just recreating those tropes that we've seen in horror movies.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think it's an important thing to talk about. It might be another reason why you don't want to play this game.
Yeah.
So what happens with these cheerleaders is the room that has the most cheerleaders in it gets an extra zombie on the outside of that room because they've attracted it by all the screaming that they do.
Oh, no. Okay.
So thematically, that's what's happening in the game. And it's, you know, obviously it's problematic, but it also works with the genre, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's what 80s and 90s horror movies, you know, basically did. So that's what the game in 2005 was trying to recreate. The other ones that you have is the tough guy, and the tough guy has the baseball bat, and he lets you repel an extra zombie. Everyone can repel one zombie. They can fight off one zombie. He can do 2.
Okay.
And then the guy with the gun, he's called the gunman. He gets an extra vote whenever we do voting.
Huh.
So here's the thing. So if I've got all 3 of my characters holed up in this room, and you've got 1, I've got 4 votes. 3 characters plus the extra one that was given to my gunman to your 1 vote. So I get to decide what happens in this room.
And what does happen in this room, Chris?
Exactly. Well, in one of the rooms, we are looking at who's going to be the security chief, who's going to be the leader of the group.
Okay.
The security chief gets a peek at where the zombies are coming because you're in the security headquarters.
Sure.
You get to look at the monitors, which are somehow still working in this zombie apocalypse.
Yeah,
and you can see, oh my God, they're headed towards the supermarket. Don't go to the supermarket. And you can make these decisions. So it's advantageous to be the security chief or the leader in that room.
Yeah.
In the parking lot, though, where there's nowhere really to hide, there is a van, and in that van is supplies. There might be grenades. I don't know why they have grenades in a truck inside a parking lot, but you know, some things happen in other countries that I don't know about. There are baseball bats. There are things that will help you run faster. There's different things that are in there, different resources and supplies, which will help your characters live longer. So if we're in the parking lot, we're going to be, all the people who are in the parking lot are going to vote which one of us goes into the van and gets to take out one new resource.
Okay.
That person will draw 3 cards, keep one for themselves, give one to any other player, and put the other one at the bottom of the deck.
Mm-hmm.
You go through the van, you quickly grab things, and the people who are in the parking lot are all just standing watch, right? They're just waiting, looking around for zombies because,
Right.
we're making noise, clanking around inside this truck. You have an incentive to vote together. So if there's 4 players in the parking lot, you and I can sit down and say, if you vote for me to search the truck, I'll give you the extra card. I'll take the best one for me, but I'll give you the second best one.
Okay. And are all the cards good?
Yeah, there's no bad cards.
Okay.
There are some that are better than others. Some let you
Yeah.
look at the dice that the security chief looked at. So he's got like a little walkie-talkie or something, and he gets to find out where the zombies are coming before he runs, that kind of thing. And then once everyone's done the parking lot, and once the security chief has been voted for, and the dice have been rolled, that tells us what rooms the zombies are going to come in, then every player at the table has to choose one character, and that character has to run from their current room to a different room.
Oh, no.
That's the rules. Like, you have to do that. Thematically, I guess what's happening is the fear, the tension was just too much. You had to leave the room and go somewhere else.
Right.
And then the zombies arrive, and the security chief reveals the 4 dice that he rolled, and those dice have room numbers on them, and a new zombie is added to each location, right? So now there's 4 in front of the supermarket and 5 in front of the bathrooms or that kind of thing. So before the dice are revealed where the zombies are going to attend, everyone has this sort of selection wheel. And the selection wheel has 2 ways that you can vote. One with a number for each room and one for a color of each player at the table.
Okay.
So at this stage in the game, you're voting where you're going to make one of your guys run from. Nobody can stay in the room that they're in, and you have to make somebody move. So you're going to make someone move from the parking lot to the bathrooms, for example.
Okay.
Once everyone has chosen their destination, the security chief reveals the dice, and those dice tell you where the zombies are going to appear.
Oh.
So there's 1 that goes to the supermarket, 2 that goes to the bathroom,
Right.
and they're added to any zombies that were already there. So you added 2 to the bathroom, now there's 5 at the bathroom or something like that.
Right.
At that point, then all players move their character to their new destination. Unless you have a card that lets you, you cannot change that destination. So all of a sudden, I was going from the parking lot to the bathroom, and it looks like there's 2 new zombies, so that's 5 that are at the bathroom. Maybe I don't want to go to the bathroom. I want to play a card that lets me change my destination. But if you don't have that card, you can't do it. You have to go to that destination.
Wow.
And then the zombies attack. So once everybody's moved, the zombies attack. And what happens is, if there are an equal number of zombies or higher than there are players in each room, they're going to break into the room, break through our defenses, and kill someone. They're going to eat somebody. And the players in that room are going to decide, they're going to vote on someone to kind of trip as the zombies are coming in the room.
They just take one person and throw them at the zombies as they run in the other direction.
Exactly. And remember, if you have a guy with a gun in there, he counts as 2 votes.
I bet he does.
Exactly. If there's 4 players in there, we can vote as a block. We can make promises to each other, like, I won't vote for you if you don't vote for me. Let's try and get someone else out of this room, that kind of thing.
Right.
Or we can say, Sherry's winning, so let's kill off one of her characters. But then Sherry can turn around and say to you, no, Chris is really winning because his 7's still available and nothing's threatening her. We should try and kill off his gunman or something like that.
Okay.
And you can promise to me that you'll vote with me and turn around and vote with Sherry.
Oh, wow.
And then my character dies, and that's the end of the round, basically.
Okay.
If there's a zombie attack in each room, you do that in each room. So players are voting which character is going to die. The other thing that happens is, as the zombies build up outside of a room, if there's ever 8 zombies outside the room's overrun. So now that location is closed and no one can go there ever again for the rest of the game. So the board itself is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And we're losing more and more players. And you only started with 3 to begin with, usually. That's the whole game. You're voting on who becomes the security chief. The security chief gets a slight advantage because they get to see where the zombies are coming.
Yeah.
And you're voting on who gets kicked out of each room as that room becomes threatened with zombies. And more zombies keep coming. The game ends when there are 4 characters left.
Okay.
Or all the characters are in one room.
Oh.
The other thing I should mention is each room has a different number of characters that it can hold. Like the security headquarter room with the cameras, that can only hold 3 people. So that's a hotly contested room. The supermarket can hold like 5 or 7 or something like that. And if you go to a room that's full, like everybody wants to go to the security room because they want a chance to be able to see where the zombies are coming before.
Right.
But, it only holds 3. So if 5 people are going there, 2 of them have to go to the parking lot and try and hide out there.
Oh, so if you can't get into the room you're trying to get into,
you end up in the parking lot. And the thing with the parking lot never gets closed.
Yeah,
it never gets overrun.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere really to hide in there because all the sounds echo off the walls and there's lights on. And, the only thing that's in there that's of value is this truck that has the resources of cards.
Okay.
And every zombie that ends up in the parking lot at the end of each round kills 1 survivor in the parking lot. It's you are dead.
Automatic.
Now, there are cards that might prevent that. You might have a card that as a grenade that lets you kill 2 zombies before they eat everybody. And if there's only 2, everyone in the parking lot's going to thank you. You might have an axe that lets you kill 1 zombie. You might have a card that says hidden so that you found the one dark corner of the parking lot that you can hide in while everyone else is getting eaten by the zombies.
Oh my God.
And now you start the next round in the parking lot, right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
So there's different things, different cards that you can do. The cards are very, very valuable. They help you survive. But the only way to get them is to risk a character getting killed in the parking lot. That character will die if any zombies end up in the parking lot, but that's decided by a dice roll.
Wow, okay.
So they may not have any parking lot zombies for this round, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So there is some advantage to going, out into the open of the parking lot. That's Mall of Horror.
Interesting, yeah.
Player who wins is the one that has the most points of the characters that have survived.
That's so cool.
Much like the other game that I talked about in this episode.
Yeah.
It is very, very common that everybody only has 1 character or maybe 2 characters that survive, depending on how many people.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's just a matter of you adding up the points of each of those characters and seeing who has the most points.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love how they've made this voting mechanism so dystopian. Like it's really... you're deciding who's gonna, like, there's just not enough. Sorry, there's just too many zombies. We all can't be in this room together.
Yeah.
I'm gonna push you over here. That's like it's just such a dark idea.
It's a very, very dark game. And I kind of remember around this time, like the 90s, early 2000s, there was a few games that it was like, you're voting who to throw off the island, who to throw out of the boat, who to feed to the zombies, that kind of thing. And I like that because in too many zombie movies, it's like, oh, we have to all stay together if we're going to make it through this. And I think real life is more like, no, me and my family, me and my friends, above all else,
Yeah, exactly.
There's only room for 3 people in this truck. Everyone else, kick them until they're out of the truck, right? That's the way the real apocalypse works, and that's the way this kind of game works. And it feels very much like that.
Yeah, wow.
This is not a game for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
This is not for a game for somebody who is going to get offended really easily or who can't take people ganging up on them.
Sure.
That happens. That does happen.
Oh,
in this
yeah.
game.
It sounds like it really could be really mean. But it also sounds way more thematic than other zombie games that I have seen, where they seem more like it's a dungeon crawl. We got a bunch of zombies coming at us. We got to roll a bunch of dice in order to kill them. And then I'm applying this effect and I'm going to do that. And then it's like a tactical game, a combat game. It's a dice game, but it doesn't feel like a zombie apocalypse. It just feels like you're fighting monsters. This one feels like it's really desperate and bleak.
It's very bleak. And you're always like, you're doing the math in your head, right? It's like, okay, well, if they vote together, they have 3 votes to my 2. What can I do? I can promise that I've got a guy in the parking lot. I can promise that person that they'll get a card if they vote for me in the parking lot and they vote for me in this room not to die, right? So now it's 3 against 2 the other way. But that person can turn around and go, well, why do I have a guy in the parking lot too? Why do I need you? Right? I can kill the guy in the parking lot and kill the guy in this room. And all of a sudden you're down 2 guys of your 3, right? So it's very backstabby. It's mean. There's no other way about it. This is a mean game. But it's relatively short.
I was going to say, you play it in an hour and then it's done and then you played it and then you play a different game and you move on. The Magic Circle is just for that purpose. You can do these mean things while we play this game. And then when we're done playing this game, those mean things are over.
Exactly. And, there's always that sort of backstabby element. There's always the trash talk, like, don't trust him. He why would you give that card to him? He voted one of your guys out earlier, that kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
But it's very, very fun, very mean, but, a good fun night for Halloween.
Nice.
Mall of Horror. Looking for more Halloween-themed board games? Listen to our episode, Creepy Board Games for a Scary Night, where we talk about games like Haunt the House, Eldritch Horror, Horrified, Flick 'em Up, Dead of Winter, and Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Have you played any of the games that we've talked about today? What's your favorite fast game for Fright Night? Drop us a line at escapeintoboardgames@gmail.com. Thanks for listening to the Escape Into Board Games podcast. Be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Escape Into Board Games. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review. It helps more people discover Escape Into Board Games. You can get an Escape Into Board Games t-shirt at geekygoodies.com/escape. Or you can help us fuel the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/escape into BGS.
This episode is produced by Matt McKenzie and Chris Cormier. Sound editing by Matt McKenzie. Production assistance by Sherry Cormier. Music by John Yasut, Daniel Carlton, and Roman Senyek. See you at the next Escape.